Hello and welcome to this edition of Tennessee Concrete Conversations. My name is Alan Sparkman and I'll be the host and the speaker today. Just want to update on a few things that are happening in regard to the Tennessee Concrete Association, as well as a bit of an overview on where we stand with the concrete supply chain dynamics that we have talked about before, and some stats and information, some data that may help inform your thinking about what the rest of 2022 may bring. So a couple things to start with. We have just recently completed our Tristate Summer Meeting at the beach in Destin, Florida. 3 associations, the Tennessee Concrete Association, the Alabama Concrete Industries Association, and the Mississippi Concrete Industries Association combined forces for this great meeting. We had over 350 people at the beach and we had a lot of fun. And we made some great connections, some great networking for the industry. So if you've never been to this meeting, I would encourage you to mark your calendar for 2023. We will be moving to late June, the week before the 4th of July in 2023. So just mark the date and join us next year at the beach. For TCA, this is an exciting time. We are getting ready to move into some new space. This will be leased space, but it will include a long-time dream of the Tennessee Concrete Associations. We'll have our own lab space. So we'll have an actual, we might call it a teaching lab. We'll be holding certification sessions there, also doing some research for TCA. And we're just really excited to finally see that become a reality. We're working on our list of lab equipment. So if you or your company has some good lab equipment that you might be interested in donating, then contact me or John Pearson, and we'll be happy to speak with you about that. We also will have a brand new classroom space that can accommodate up to 40 people, and we have some events already scheduled for that coming up later in the year. Our anticipated move-in date is fall of 2022, and as we get a bit closer and as contractors hopefully continue to show up, we'll put out a more specific date, and we do plan to have an open house and some fun events just to let everybody see the new space and figure out where we are. We also have in the digital world a new refreshed tnconcrete.org website. If you haven't checked that out, I would encourage you to do so. It's been reorganized. We think it's much easier to use. So would appreciate your comments if you have any. And if we can do something to improve it or make it better, please let me know. So we continue to hear this drumbeat about the future of the economy and home building and construction. And you can hear lots of different voices depending on where you're listening. So I've been taking a look at the data that is out there, and my personal opinion is, especially here in Tennessee, that the news is not all bad. So I want to share some of the things that I've found, some of the data points, and you can make your own conclusions. I want to start with housing permits, residential permits in the state of Tennessee. This information comes primarily from our friends at Market Graphics, Etzel Charles, whom many of you have heard speak at TCA events in the past. They publish a monthly overview of housing starts, not just in Tennessee, but across a wide swath of the country. And when you look at that wide data and we compare 2022 year to date with the same period of time in 2021, the data says that permits, now this is permits for new construction, that overall permits in the southeast area are down a little less than 4%, 3.7%. When you look at just Tennessee, now this is the urban markets in Tennessee, So it's Memphis, Montgomery County, Clarksville, Nashville, Chattanooga, Knoxville, and typically it's the counties that also surround those metropolitan areas. So far for 2022, we are up just less than 1%, about 0.8% versus 2021, which, by the way, was a record year for residential construction in Tennessee. Now, we are seeing that some of the markets, including Nashville, are down just slightly year over year from last year. And a lot of this can be, sometimes there are inconsistencies in the data related to the timing. So the first quarter, often you see numbers that are a bit different because of the weather. But these current numbers go through May of 2022, so it's the first 5 months. And again, when you look at this data, we continue to be building at a very high pace in Tennessee. Other places are already seeing some slight slowdowns, and I want to emphasize slight because this in no way is a disaster, but it is a slight easing in the rate of growth that is present in many markets. When you look around at some of the other information that's out there, Tennessee is still in the top 10 states for housing stability. This is a combination of the overall economy, the cost of housing, a number of different factors. So we're I think in the 6th spot for housing stability. And as I noted earlier, we continue to be building at the same pace that we were last year in 2021. Realtor.com just came out with a revised forecast for residential building activity in 2022. Their previous forecast was for growth over 2021. The revised forecast is now for a 6.7% decline. But, and this is important when you look at this data, you have to look at it in context. Even with this revised downward forecast for 2022, 2022 will still be the second biggest sales year since 2007. And as you might already have guessed, the other biggest sales year since 2007 was 2021, last year. So 2021 was an exceptional year, especially in Tennessee. And when you look at numbers that talk about declines from 2021, the context is that was a record level of activity. So a decline from a record level is typically not as bad as a headline might make it seem. The other thing that is interesting about the Tennessee economy, so these next set of numbers, we look back to February 2020. So this was the last month, is what we call the pre-pandemic numbers. So you'll see a lot of comparisons that go back to 2020. In Tennessee, overall construction jobs are now 12% above what they were in February of 2020. So you take all the disruption that came from the pandemic, all the uncertainty, and you fast forward to today, July of 2022, we're up 12% in Tennessee. Not every state is in that same shape, but we are in good shape. We've heard a lot recently about the price of lumber coming down. Of course, we heard an awful lot about the price of lumber and how much it added to the cost of a new single-family home as we worked our way through the pandemic and all the supply chain disruptions. Still today, even though lumber has come down quite dramatically from its peak, which was several months ago, today, compared to 2020, February of 2020, lumber is still adding more than $14,000 to the cost of a new home. Now, at the very peak, that number got up to somewhere above $35,000. I bring this up because there is still opportunity for concrete in today's single-family home market. Our best alternative to lumber is insulated concrete forms, ICFs. And if we could just convert a relatively small percentage of the home starts that take place every year in the United States, that would add up to a lot of concrete. In fact, probably more than enough concrete to offset a slight reduction in the number of homes that are being built. So we need to stay involved in this discussion about the many advantages of ICFs and how affordable they now are compared to kind of the old standard of stick-built homes. In some cases today, you can build with ICFs at no cost premium to lumber. And the same is true in commercial construction. So perhaps that's a topic for a future podcast. Some other data that goes back to February 2020 and talks about or measures the increase and to some extent the volatility of pricing. Lumber today, again, July 2022, lumber is 98.2% more expensive than it was in February of 2020, so almost double. Natural gas is up 414% over that same time period. And of course, we know that oil and petroleum are up significantly. They're not up 400%, but we feel that at the pump, both personally and then obviously for the heavy trucks that we use in our business. Steel is up 128%. Concrete is up, but this is important in your conversations with customers and potential developers, designers. Concrete is up, but we're up 16.8%. That is dramatically different than what we've seen in terms of increases for the competitive materials like steel and wood. So our prices are up, absolutely. We have our own problems with supply chain dynamics. We're still facing pretty serious cement allocations in most of Tennessee. Fortunately, that does not seem to be getting worse, but it's still a reality in today's marketplace. But when you look at other materials, concrete has been far less volatile. Our pricing has been far more predictable, and our increase has been less than almost every other building material out there. Those are significant advantages that concrete continues to have. So just factor that into your conversations with customers and with people who are thinking about building. Concrete is still the best choice they can make. So that's a quick review of some important data points. I'm excited to say that coming up in August and months later in the year, we're going to have some expert speakers, some expert guests to help us go a little bit further into some of these numbers and perhaps give us some sense of what we can expect in the last half of 2022 and where we might be headed in 2023. We're also going to talk about an increasingly important topic in the concrete industry, which is environmental product declarations. So we're going to talk with an expert on that in one of our upcoming interviews. And again, if you have a topic that you would like to hear us cover on Tennessee Concrete Conversations, please reach out to me directly, Alan Sparkman, and we'll put that topic on the list. Thank you for listening and have a great rest of the summer.